All right, Michael Kuiper, welcome to a conversation here with the Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership. Thanks for your time. I know you have been involved in a lot of things here at the Naval Academy and beyond, and it's those things I'd like to kind of dig out and get some context. So for those who've been following this series, and you as well, you know we've been engaged in a conversation about great power competition, the type of environment, operating environment that we envision as most likely for our midshipmen in the coming years. This conversation in its current form has been taking place nearly a year now. It involved a series of short films. It's been a series of complementary podcasts as well, with subject matter experts, each approaching this task from a slightly different angle. Yours is a very unique angle here. And I don't mean to suggest that your current time working with A.R.I.E.S or the drone team, as it might be called, or remotely piloted vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles. There's so many different ways to describe these things, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that. But your history here at the Naval Academy goes back even further than that. Just for the broader understanding of the folks who will be watching this, tell us about your connection to the Naval Academy. How far back does it go, and why are you still here today?
Great. I would love to. And thanks for letting me share the story of some of the great things that the midshipmen are really doing here. Yep. And such a unique institution
it is.
To do this.
Yep.
So I guess to start with, I would say this comes from an upbringing from my family of being thankful for being an American. Mm-hmm. I'm a first-generation American. My family escaped communism, the Soviet Union, in 1976, and they were actually political refugees in Italy for 6 months, and lucky for me, they went to Chicago, and we really flourished in the country. So as I was growing up, my family always said, you have to pay back somehow, some kind of service to the country. Doesn't matter what, but you have to pay back to your country. So when I was in high school and I was trying to think about what do I want to do with the rest of my life, I actually wanted to be a doctor. Yeah. But first, I said, I'm going to serve in the military. It's the way to go. It really reinforces what my family taught me. And if I'm going to join, I'm going to join the best force, the Marine Corps.
You'll get no argument from me. All right, just to be clear.
Yes, yep. Yes. So, and I made the right decision. So when I was 17, I went to the recruiting station and said, I want to join the Marine Corps. And they tried to do the pitch, and I told them, I'm already sold.
Yeah.
So so I enlisted in the Marine Corps, went to boot camp the day after high school. And
in San Diego?
In Parris Island.
Parris Island, okay, great.
Parris Island. So
there we go. Nice.
And it was one of the best things I've ever done. And I realized as I was enlisted that I wanted to continue my service in the military. Yeah. But it was important to get a college degree for me. So I started looking at where can I get a college degree and continue to be a Marine. Yep. And naturally, I went to the Naval Academy because that's where I can continue doing what I want to do, be a Marine, but also get that college education.
That's great.
So I graduated from here. Our class, the class of 2006, was very special because it was the first year that members of it was the first year that after 9/11 that people volunteered to go to the Naval Academy.
Right.
So my class was the class that said, I know that we're going to be going to war, and I volunteer. So it was very special.
Yeah, so 9/11 precedes your I-Day,
right,
induction day, and plebe summer experience. So
exactly.
You came into this very clear-eyed about what you would likely be doing post-graduation.
Absolutely.
And you may know this, we had one of your classmates on this very podcast, current
Brad.
Deputy Director of the Stockdale Center, Brad Snyder. Yeah.
Yep.
So 06 is well represented here in this series. That's great.
I think that timing was very important, and it's why our class is so tight. Mm-hmm. We've had some classmates that were killed through combat and then through other means, and it's really brought our class together. It's just there's something really special about the class of 2006, and I think some of it has to do with the timing of when we went to the Naval Academy and our mission to serve.
Sure, I agree. I think that comes out loud and clear in every conversation I have with you and your classmates who still have a pretty large presence around here. So that's terrific. So that's great context too, the broader kind of strategic view that you had of service and why the Naval Academy. Tell us a little bit about your time in the Marine Corps, and then you've done some things in between the Marine Corps and coming back here kind of on a full-time basis, more or less, right? That actually plays in pretty importantly to the role that you currently hold.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So my time in the Marine Corps was very varied. When I was enlisted, I started out as a mortarman in the infantry, which I didn't even know what a mortarman was when they called my name out and said, Kuiper, mortarman.
Yeah.
And then I went to the sniper platoon, and that's when I got accepted to go to the Naval Academy.
Right.
Once I graduated, I knew I wanted to go back infantry, and I served the rest of my time as an infantry officer. And that included more than 80 countries during my whole time of service,
Wow.
which is unique.
That's more than most. Yeah, 80 countries
Yeah.
in the time of your service in the Marine Corps.
Right.
Why so many countries? That's not typical for anybody, but
No.
But an infantry officer, right? There's certain expectations that you'll deploy to predictable places. That list doesn't include 80. Though. Why so many?
Well, I got to serve in each division, and I've gone on 4 Marine Expeditionary Units where
Right.
on ship. And another funny thing is I've served more on ship than some of my classmates that were in the
Surface
Navy.
warfare officers, yeah.
Right.
I'd imagine.
But we did our cruises, and we stopped at different countries doing theater security cooperation type stuff.
Sure.
I was a fast platoon commander as well. Went to a lot of places, and it was actually when Benghazi happened.
That, just for clarity, that's Fleet Anti-Terrorism Support Team.
Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team.
Security Team, sorry.
Yes.
Yep. Very good.
So
Very good.
FAST teams, or Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Teams,
Yep.
are meant to reinforce the Navy COCOM commander.
Right.
So they are the reaction force for that Navy COCOM
Right.
commander.
Right.
And it was a very unique time for me to be a commander in that unit, because 2 days after our platoon got to Rota, Spain, I decided, hey, there's 2 platoons out here. We're going to see how quickly we can mobilize, because it's part of the name, FAST.
Sure.
So we were mobilizing, and my company commander comes out and says, Mike, what are you doing? And I told him, and he said, you don't know what's going on? And he proceeded to tell me Benghazi was going on, and he said, you guys are ready to go. You're the platoon that's going to go to Benghazi.
Interesting.
The other platoon's going to Tripoli. So we were caught up in that whole thing. We were actually on the plane. We found out that the ambassador had been killed. We got rerouted to Greece, and we went all over from that deployment.
Made quite famous in books and a movie about
Correct.
this.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then just some of my other tours, I was just lucky to be able to do a lot of theater security cooperation type missions, especially in my time in Marcent Forward in Bahrain, and got to go to a bunch of different countries. And I think part of it is also because I have an aptitude to relate to people from other nations and really have a passion to bring people together. I was put in a lot of those roles.
Yeah. Well, that's tremendous opportunities that you took advantage of, and the Marine Corps took advantage of in you, in some of the skills that you brought there. So what got you into drones, the remotely piloted vehicles? Because you're featured in the film series, of course, and A.R.I.E.S is more generally featured quite often, actually. And there's some really exciting things that I really want to dig into. But how did you wind up there? How did you wind up with an interest and expertise in drones?
So I was in Norway when the full-scale invasion happened in Ukraine. And as I mentioned before, my family came from Ukraine.
Right.
So I decided I wanted to do something. I wanted to help in some way. One of the missions that I had just completed when I was in 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, was the Afghan refugee resettlement in Fort Pickett at the time, Virginia.
Right.
And so I knew a lot about refugee operations as well, and I just knew I wanted to help somehow. So I decided to retire, and I went to Ukraine. Right. And I've been doing a bunch of things in Ukraine, being able to speak the languages and knowing people there and really being able to provide some expertise has been helpful.
So you had a native language ability in Ukrainian. You speak Russian as well?
Russian.
Yeah?
So
Russian.
It's actually stronger in Russian than Ukrainian.
Okay.
Which is, people don't realize that part of the reason that my family left was because of persecution. And you can see that in the way that the Soviet Union forced the Russian language onto its people.
Sure.
So we actually spoke Russian at home, and and even a lot of people in Ukraine spoke Russian. Now they're learning Ukrainian.
Right.
But it's a close language, and we did speak Ukrainian as well, so I do have some Ukrainian language ability as well.
What are the types of things you found yourself doing when in Ukraine?
It was really a crazy, different assortment of things. So
Yeah.
I was delivering trucks to some of the soldiers. I was helping some of the refugee camps figure out how do you deal with these people, and sharing lessons learned that we learned here in the U.S. with refugees
Yep.
and displaced people. I created a computer program that translated in real time between a bunch of different languages to help some of these centers. And then I was helping with some of the aid that was coming to Ukraine. So those were some of the things I was doing. I was also meeting with some of the Ukrainian units, seeing what their needs are, and then seeing this technology at work. Coming back to the U.S. between my trips, and we live in Annapolis now, my wife and I, and we just love Annapolis.
Right.
So
It's an easy place to love, isn't
yeah,
it?
and after all those places, this is where we want to call home for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But we had sponsor kids here from the Naval Academy, and just talking to them on, what are you guys learning? What are you doing? And interacting with some of my Marine friends and some of my Navy friends, I realized how far behind our forces are.
Yeah.
And I was put in a unique position where I can help bridge that gap between modern warfare and U.S. culture and Ukrainian culture, and how do we fuse those things? So
Yeah, so I get the cultural bridging that you're capable of because of your very unique background. Tell us a little bit about modern warfare versus, traditional or outdated, however you want to frame this. What were the big takeaways there? Because after all, any conversation about great power competition is a conversation about the future operating environment that we imagine ourselves to be in. And you can turn on any news broadcast or pick up any media source about the war in Ukraine, and it's almost always couched as a glimpse into the future, not least of which because it's characterized by, the fighting is characterized by unmanned systems. So if you could kind of summarize or give us the executive summary of those things that you refer to as modern war.
So I think the big gap is we have had tremendous advantages when I fought in Afghanistan, for example, air superiority being one example, and some assumptions when you're fighting a war like that.
Yep.
And when those things go out the window, some of the items that are important to concentrate on include how much money do you spend on some of these weapon systems?
Sure.
Where do you get them?
Yep.
Logistics. And it's really easy to concentrate on the shiny toys like drones.
Right.
But there's an ecosystem around those drones. And how do you uphold that ecosystem, and how do you use it in a maneuver warfare sense?
Sure.
So, one thing that I really think is unique about the Naval Academy is you have these young students that know that they're going to lead Marines and sailors in the fleet, and they all have an engineer background. And I think that engineer background that I had from the Naval Academy really pushed me into some of the places that I went using that education.
Sure.
And so what I'm finding with the midshipmen is you've got midshipmen that are young, that are not afraid of technology, that will push through challenges and merge that with new ideas that are not habits from other wars.
Sure.
Then it's a really innovative and exciting way of thinking and fighting.
Yeah. So you're really talking about a mindset here. And, throughout this series and even preceding series that we had on artificial intelligence and various other things, we've talked about the value of curiosity and adaptability, right? Curiosity is something that we try to inculcate in midshipmen, any students, right? That's kind of the point of education, is to draw out a natural, inherent curiosity that they bring to the table. And it sounds like your impression of midshipmen is like mine. They are insatiably curious, and they're great problem solvers because of the technical education and other factors. When it comes to adaptability, though, right, that second piece, very critical piece, How have you found your efforts, and maybe even drawing on lessons from Ukraine, because Ukraine certainly seems to be a model of adaptability to circumstances that are not favorable to them, right? The balance of power is not, combat power is not favorable to them. What have you seen in the development of an adaptive mindset, right? Kind of cultivating adaptability in the mindset of these really talented students. Where have we made strides? What else can be done? What else should be done in that aspect of the developmental program here at the Academy?
I think that midshipmen here feel free to try things out.
Yeah.
And we put them in an environment where we tell them, go ahead and try it. If it doesn't work, no one's going to die.
Yeah.
And I think being able to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes is a crucial part of adaptability.
Yeah.
And something that maybe the fleet doesn't have the ability or the time to do.
Right.
So I think one factor of it being adaptive is being able to make those mistakes and learn from those mistakes and being resilient to push through them.
Right.
One thing I've seen in the fleet too, and we've been supporting, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that, some of the fleet units.
Yeah.
And connecting the fleet with the Naval Academy. And when we go out there, we go to some units and they say, hey, this thing doesn't work, so they leave it on a shelf and they don't take it on a mission.
Yeah.
Where here, what we do is we ask them, why doesn't it work?
Yeah.
Can you fix it?
Right.
Take it out. Let's figure it out instead of leaving it on the shelf.
So let's dig into that. I really am curious about those connections between the Academy and the fleet and operating forces. But before we do that, there's also an immediate history, I think, that's really important here. So when you come back, you've got sponsor midshipmen, at home, and you've kind of re-energized by that, reconnected to the Academy in that way. The first iteration of the team that you coach, that you lead, was referred to as SWAT-C. What is SWAT-C, now Aries, and what's the genesis of that effort?
SWAT-C is Squad with Automated Teammate Challenge. So we had been doing a program with West Point where we compete with West Point. So we have a team from Navy and a team from West Point, and they meet on some kind of battleground, and it's a force on force, and then we give them technology. Now, they're using this technology to either shorten the OODA loop or shorten the kill chain in order to defeat the adversary.
Sure.
And there's been different flavors of it through the years. We've also had cybersecurity aspects of it. We've had the robotic aspect of it. Deception is another piece. There's a lot of different pieces when we're talking about force on force. And so that's the history of SWAT-C.
That's great.
Now, recently, we wanted to rebrand. So we wanted to change the construct because what we found, even with West Point, people are holding on to the standard infantry tactics and the standard infantry.
Saw a little bit of that
form.
in the short film series. We got some great footage of you and the team in the field at West Point doing some of those infantry tactics and how drones augmented some of those infantry tactics. It was fascinating.
Yeah, it was really exciting, and it was great to see this young plebe, and she was flying a drone, and she was flying it over the woods, and they saw deer and turkey running away.
Yeah.
And so she had the foresight to think, West Point can't run that fast.
Right.
So
Right.
we're gonna explore it and send a patrol over there, and
Yeah.
they moved their machine guns and did the things that we told them to do, and totally annihilated West Point from that one little technology assist.
Yeah. Talk about adaptability, right? So you're learning on the fly. You're merging lessons from the natural world with tactical applications. That's fascinating. So this rebranding, though, into Aries. Now, what is Aries, and what's the substance of the rebrand? What's the direction you've taken it?
So we let the midshipmen run the team, and like I said, we let them make mistakes. We let them do what they want. They really wanted a rebrand because they wanted to attract more midshipmen to the team.
Yeah.
And in a different way. And they wanted to open the aperture to just not squad on squad warfare, but to warfare in general.
Yeah.
And how do we augment that warfare?
That's right.
And how do we use what we have, not just right now, but what we're going to use in the future, and the mindset that we're going to have for the future.
Right.
So Aries came about from that change in the team's thinking. Mm-hmm. And we've actually structured into squadrons now to get away from the construct of infantry, Marine infantry or Army infantry squads, because we want them to think in different ways. And they've come up with some really cool things like Wraith teams, which are kind of fast assault teams that go ahead, really more distributed operations. How do you command and control when you don't have the squad that's together? How do you command and control when every transmission from your radio, you're telling the enemy where you're at? So they've come with very innovative ways to overcome that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and the midshipmen on the team are not only going to go into the Marine Corps or SEALs, they're going to become aviators and surface warfare officers and submariners and the whole gamut. And you want them to develop a mindset that adapts to technology, that changes, that is flexible, to understand the implications of technology going forward. So I love that rebranding idea.
It's not just about adapting, too. We want them to look at what is the next technology.
Sure.
So we want them to take this awesome education they got from the Naval Academy, the experience of the military officers, the mentorship of the civilian teachers, and apply that to think, what is next? And what they've come up with is, this drone thing is old. It's old news. If we're studying that, we're not really adapting, we're catching up.
Right.
So what do we need to look at next? Well, first of all, the U.S., unless we're fighting Canada and Mexico, and that's not going to probably happen, we're going to go across some water. So we need to look at the maritime domain. Right. How do we expand into the maritime domain and leverage this technology in order to project our power and make sure that we need to do the things that we need to do from a maritime capability?
Makes total sense. This is the Naval Academy. What do some of those conversations with the fleet look like then? What have been the partnering opportunities? And perhaps most importantly, where do you see those going in the next few years?
I'm really excited about the partnering opportunities in the fleet because it's a connection and a view into what they're going to be doing. So when we come back from these exercises, we really reinvigorate the students to do some of these amazing things that they're doing at the Naval Academy. So when we go to the fleet and we train with them, what I'm seeing is they are way behind. They're just trying to figure things out.
Right.
I'm still combating the traditional thinking of, oh, there's a drone, I'm just going to train somebody how to shoot it better with a shotgun. Which is just, if you know anything about drones, it's just a joke. As far as being the primary way to combat drones.
Right.
So so going to some of these units, they're actually taking the technology and the out of the box thinking that these midshipmen are applying, and they are and they're taking it into their SOPs. So some examples, 1st Marine Division actually used A.R.I.E.S SOPs to put into their SOP in it, and we are annotated in the SOP. And we just got back a couple weeks ago from North Carolina working with 2nd Marine Division, and it was really exciting. We went out there, and some of the things we were doing was, I think, very innovative because we were with midshipmen and because the Marines were excited about us being there. And it was really neat to see the change.
You don't get to see too many midshipmen in the field, especially, right?
Well, sometimes in the summer they do, but traditionally it's like, oh, they're like college students. Okay, come with us. We'll drag you along. And at first, like, we'll go out to these units and they look at, these young midshipmen and their uniforms. They're like, okay, great. They're going to teach us something. But there's a change when we start interacting with them where they start asking questions from the midshipmen, and they're like, this is so awesome, and when are you going to get to the fleet? We can't wait to have you part of the team.
That's great.
So it's really exciting.
And it's like marketing the institution as well.
As
far as that goes, that's fantastic.
This last exercise, it was really exciting. We had 2 battalions that are about to go on deployment. So they had what's called a MCRE, Marine Corps Combat Readiness Evaluation. So they're getting evaluated by the regiment, and we attached to one of the battalions. And first what we provided, they thought, oh, we're going to get some drone operators. And I told them, wait a second, you're not getting just drone operators. You're going to get a capability, a tactical capability that surrounds those drone operators.
Right.
So that's an EW specialist, a drone operator, which could be FPV or an ISR drone, because they have to kind of work in tandem.
First-person view and intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Yep.
Right. So,
Yep.
when you're talking about two different drones, for those that might not know, you have the drones that you don't want to explode, and you put the really good optics and cameras on them, and you spend a lot of money. And then you have the drones that are going to be a one-way drone. So you can do reconnaissance, you can do some of the other things, but it just does not have the money invested into that drone, so we can crash into them.
Yeah.
So we went out there and we wrecked them.
Is that right?
We did. We destroyed a 60 millimeter section. We destroyed Type 2 UAS with 8 Marines around it. We went in and we saw some Marines with a red lens flashlight, and we went in and destroyed squad reinforced. And the Marine leadership loves it, because now they're getting exposed to the different sounds of the different drones that are flying there, and they start thinking, what are we going to do?
Yep.
One of our, Ensign, we call him Deadly, Ensign Deadly Steadley, he went in and he landed a FPV drone in the middle of 2 vehicles and really a command center in one of the urban mount towns, we call it. Yeah. And so, but he didn't detonate it.
Yeah.
He waited. And then some Marines came out and they saw this thing, and they weren't quite sure. They were briefed that they were around. They weren't quite sure what to do and what it was. So unfortunately for the Marine, it was detonated there, so it injured or would have killed him in real life and the 2 vehicles. So very catastrophic kind of event. Yeah. But he took it because he didn't know what to do, and there were porta-johns next to it. Opened the porta-johns and slams it in the toilet of the porta-john. So from that, we learned a couple things. Yeah. One, for our TTP, don't put booby traps next to porta-johns for Marines, because they love smashing things. But 2, they just don't know how to deal with this. Realistically, if a drone lands, what you want to do is you want to shoot it so it can't fly, and then treat it like an IED.
Of course, yeah.
And now they know, and so if they go to combat and something like this happens, maybe we save some lives. Yeah. By this little tiny exercise that we did.
Yeah. Whether it be for the purpose of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, or first-person view, things that blow up and are destructive and lethal and all those types of things, the case has been made that in the U.S. we're somewhat behind. We haven't created the types of chips that are affordable to build these things. There's a lot of implications going forward, not just at the tactical level. These are great tactical stories and anecdotes, lessons, but great power competition implies a lot of things. It's not just the military part of it, but it's diplomatic, informational,
Absolutely.
Economic. What are some of the things that you've learned in this process about drones, unmanned systems, from an economic, industrial output standpoint, especially in view the Ukrainians seem to be getting this right? This has been their edge in many ways. It has enabled them to keep a much, much larger force at bay. How do we pull lessons from that? And what do you think the country's strategy for the creation and ultimate deployment of drones at scale is going to be?
I think we're learning. So until you start doing something, it's hard to know what the issues are going to be.
So it's experimentation. Back to the failure part, allowing people to fail. It's the experimentation itself that is the key first step.
You have to take that first step. That's so important. And I'm so happy to see that we're finally taking that first step, and the different services are getting serious about it. Yeah. But what I'm also seeing is I'm seeing platform-centric solutions. And there's a lot of problems with being platform-centric, because platforms change, technology changes, and it's really a way of thinking. Yeah. And around those platforms, there's a lot of other issues that people don't realize until they buy that platform. For example, spectrum management. Yeah. How do you communicate with these drones and receive the video and deconflict it with all of the rest of the things that are going out in the battlefield and in the civilian world? Right. That is a huge problem that we need to figure out. Sure. And then the supply chain is big. All of the motors right now that even Ukraine is using are made in China. And it's a problem for Ukraine because I've talked to some Ukrainians, and they'll say, we like to use third party to buy some of these products because Russia finds out that certain factories providing motors to China, and they say, I'll pay you twice as much if you bump them down and make our stuff first.
Yeah, sure.
So making it here in the U.S. is important.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of movement recently to do that, but it is crucial, and it's a deterrence thing.
Yeah.
So, if we're looking at some of those other areas that might get invaded, or people talk about some of our adversaries attacking island nations or other contested areas, if they know that we can make these cheap solutions to put against them, they're less likely to invade.
Yeah, certainly seems promising that we're having these conversations. Companies like Anduril getting into this business. The plan for Arsenal One, I believe it's called, somewhere near Columbus, Ohio. Even reports that it's going to be one of the largest manufacturing facilities of its type in the world to produce these things at scale, and various built-to-purpose systems, to your point, that you can't just be focused on one platform alone, but build for a variety of needs. Is that another reason to be optimistic? Because there does seem to be a kind of watershed moment right now when you hear people like Palmer Luckey from Anduril speak and talking about creating these things as if they were just simple commercial off the shelf. Do you imagine this is going to help kind of close the gap, if there is a gap, with China at this moment?
I think we've started. There's so much more to do.
Yeah.
I think there's also a mindset where we went to the wars in the Middle East, and then we had contractors that fixed everything for us. And I remember being a young Marine in the barracks, and I needed to paint my room. I would go to the self-help shop, and I would get the paint, and I would do it myself, and I would be proud of it, and I would take care of it. Yep. And, recently there's a change of mindset of, I can't touch this, or I can't play with this because a contract has to do it. It's going to void our contract.
Yeah. And
there needs to be a shift in thinking of, hey, this is ours. We own it. And I'm really pushing it with our midshipmen. We brought a solder with a power unit to the field so we can fix the drones ourselves in the field.
Love it.
And that's what we need to do. We need to empower our leaders so that they can train the sailors, Marines, airmen, soldiers to do it themselves.
To keep them flying.
Keep them flying,
that's
fix it themselves.
Approach,
But they need to have the education in order to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that the Naval Academy produces the type of officer that hits the fleet that can speak with their troops and tell them there is a place for contractors, and I think contractors are great, and I think that they are part of the solution. But I also think that they need to partner more with some of the units out there in the fleet and come up together with the solution.
Yeah.
I would also add, in Ukraine, there's a very tight loop between the front lines and the engineers.
Right.
So they will call them and say, hey, can you change the way that this thing beeps, or the way that I detonate this drone?
Yeah.
And it'll happen within weeks. Where here, just the bureaucracy of getting the contractors the support that they need to do this stuff is so big that we just don't do it fast enough.
Yeah. So we have to really reevaluate the system in place that fields systems, and that's a major shakeup.
It's tough.
Yeah, that's
tough
a
to do.
Major shakeup. But hopefully we're up to the challenge, and it seems like you're addressing it in the cradle, so to speak, right here at this entry-level source of officers. And if you're going to start it anywhere, what a great place to start it.
Yeah.
Right.
The one other thing I was really excited about is we went to Leatherneck, and Leatherneck is the evaluation period for those that want to go Marine Corps, and it happens in Quantico, Virginia.
Right.
So we went out there with some of our FPV drones, and even in Leatherneck, we were still teaching people to go into a room to clear it.
Yep.
So we brought these drones, and we showed them, you can send if the door is open or the window is open, you can send in a drone, and you can actually control an entire town with just a few drones. And the videos were really neat. The change in behavior from the students was instantaneous.
Yeah.
And we had the air officer from TBS there.
Ah.
From that, TBS invited us to help them in their mount exercise and their war effects. So we're working very closely with TBS now on incorporating some of these lessons that we've learned here at the Naval Academy, and then every single person that is going in the Marine Corps is going to get exposed to it.
That's great. I had the opportunity to go back to Camp Barrett there where the basic school is twice now in the past month after having not been there for many, many years. And I can tell you this, you'll be happy to know that they're still talking about some of that experimentation there. We were there for a separate topic, but people kept bringing up this idea of having midshipmen there and experimentation taking place there. And it's spreading to the second lieutenants, regardless of commissioning source. And there's a lot of excitement that's been generated, which I'm really happy to see. And that's in large part due to your efforts with that. So now I'm going to ask you to kind of shift gears almost entirely. You're talking about, to this point, great power competition between Russia and Ukraine, NATO, the U.S. to a degree. We all have vested interests and are supporting in one degree or another, in one way or another. If you could shift your gaze for a minute to the Indo-Pacific region, so much of the conversation we've been having is about the operating environment that we envision, perhaps in the defense of Taiwan or retaking Taiwan, or war at sea in the South China Sea and things like that. It's kind of unfair to ask you to speculate, but who better to speculate about the future of systems, especially drones, unmanned systems, than somebody who's been experimenting with these things? If you had to project into, say 2027, knowing the experimentation.
It's funny you picked that date.
Yeah, that's right. It's randomly selected.
Randomly selected.
Right. They selected the date, just to be clear. Right. So with that in mind, how might this play out if the U.S. is called to operate in support of an ally, operate in support of a series of allies who are trying to reestablish stability to that region? What will modern warfare look like? Maybe I'll ask again, too, how prepared are we? What are the areas that we really have to step up? And not to make this too complex a question, what are the things that we can and should be doing here at the Naval Academy to prepare for that moment?
Well, a couple of thoughts on this. So first, nobody wants war. And I don't think China wants war. We don't want war.
Right.
And the best way to prevent it, in my opinion, is through strength. If they know that they go to war against us and we're going to smash them, they're not going to go to war against us.
Right.
So being hard on the midshipmen.
Best form of deterrence.
Right.
Yep.
And being technologically advanced, having supply chains that do not depend on China, and just being real with China, I think is important.
Right.
I think it'll maintain our friendship with China as well if we can do that. But I've seen like a very different cultural mentality with America and really Europe, and then kind of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And the difference is, an American will think, hey, if I'm nice to someone, they're going to be nice back to me.
Right.
That's a natural thing for us to think.
So there's a kind of naivete in that thinking. Right?
Yeah. But you go to some of these countries and they think, okay, well, you're just weak and I'm going to take advantage of you. And it's just a different way of thinking.
Sure.
So I think being tough and being on midshipmen and being ready for war is really, really important to prevent the war. Now, that being said, if China does decide, or any adversary decides to go to war against us, I think some of the technologies that are going to be important include things that will shorten the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act.
John Boyd's favorite way of framing things, right?
Right, and everyone in the militaries.
Yeah, of course.
But it's smart. I mean, it talks about how do you tighten the decision loop, and when you have all these
gain
sensors,
temporal advantage. If you do that, you have the advantage of time. You'll always be inside the decision cycle of the adversary.
But when you have all these sensors and you have all this information, it needs to get filtered. The right information needs to get to the right person. if I'm a platoon commander and I'm about to do an assault, I don't need to know what color hat somebody's wearing or exactly, where they're at. It's just going to go into automatic immediate action drills at that point.
Yeah.
So having the right information to shorten that OODA loop with all of these sensors, and how you do that is you practice this human robot kind of swarm team. So I think a lot of people envision, including myself, you have somebody go out there and they have all of these different devices that are connected to them that they can control.
Sure.
In order to have effects on our enemy.
Now, it would be irresponsible of me as the director of an ethics center, a Center for Ethical Leadership, to not at least pull the string a little bit about the ethical implications of these largely, or potentially at least, autonomous systems. This kill chain, in order to shorten this kill chain, to abbreviate the OODA loop, as you describe. Of course, machines can make decisions much faster. A human on the loop or a human in the loop in these decision processes, some will argue, do nothing but slow the process. And that's an advantage that we don't want to surrender, because the enemy, many assume, will not be constrained by the same ethical obligations. But that necessarily doesn't dictate how we think about this ethically. What are your thoughts about the ethical implications of using such technology that may take the human out of the loop?
Well, I think it's important for us as who we are as Americans to be ethical. So I know that our adversaries don't necessarily fight ethically, but it's part of why we're Americans and why we fight,
right,
is to be ethical. We need to be careful when we use these technologies, and sometimes it is human out of the loop, and we need to understand how we program these technologies in order to be ethical. But we also need to make sure we don't use it as an excuse to not be ethical.
Right.
So there's a story. Someone asked some Ukrainians that came and visited the Naval Academy at the Black Sea Institute a similar question of, let's say you see somebody and the decision-making process of whether to kill him or not to kill him. And the pilots were like, look, if I see somebody as a civilian and they're not armed, we're not going to kill them. We're people.
Right.
Like, that is not something that we do. And I thought that was a very important lesson of, hey, we need to keep that there. Right. When I was in Afghanistan and I was a platoon commander, I noticed one of my Marines, who was a Lance Corporal, had started looking kind of tired and not characteristic of himself. And I'll back it up. A couple days, before, there had been an ambush. None of our troops got killed, and he had shot someone that was, we think, he didn't have a weapon on him, but when we went to find him afterward, but he had a radio, and we think the weapon was taken away. So he was a spotter. Yeah. We also think the weapon was taken away, and he had went to see who hadn't gotten shot, and he came back. Yeah. And he started having nightmares of this person turning into his little brother. And we had kind of sent him home a little bit to or back to the base and not on patrols to deal with it. But the point of this story was, I had talked to him as an officer. There's a different relationship with the enlisted. I'm never going to be as close as the platoon sergeant is with the enlisted.
Sure.
But that is a good thing, because when we had a conversation, I told him, you were within the rules of engagement, and you followed the rules of engagement. You did what was right, and you had reacted as we had trained you to. Yeah. And I'm the one who takes responsibility for that ethically, because I'm your platoon commander and I told you to do this stuff. Yep. Now, if I was unethical, or if I had lied, or they knew me not to have good moral character, then they would have had a lot of problems with it.
Sure.
But because he knew who I was, I think that really helped him deal with some of the emotional baggage. So
called sometimes moral injury, right? When you believe that you've somehow compromised your honor, the best preventative medicine for moral injury is clear, direct conversations like that. So that was your ethical responsibility coming out as an officer. So
Right.
well done. Great story on that. I love hearing that.
And it's so important.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about swarms and we're talking about robots, it's equally important. So we can't use the excuse. There's also an article that, I think I did as a midshipman, they still do, called Damn XO.
Absolutely. Still
And
taught here.
we still talk about it. It's
Yep.
a great example of
Yep.
someone laying the blame on somebody else. Well, this
Yeah.
person told me to do it.
Yeah.
We can't do that with the robots. Well, I didn't make the decision. The robot made the
Yeah.
decision. So it's really important for us ethically to understand what are the implications of letting this thing go and do what it's programmed to do,
Yeah.
because ultimately we're the ones that are responsible for it.
Absolutely. So another classic, even timeless lesson still taught here, taught when you were a midshipman, taught decades and decades, if not centuries ago, is the fact that you can delegate authority to those lower levels to make tactical decisions in the heat of the moment in order to have the tightest OODA loop, as you described, but you don't delegate responsibility. You, as the platoon commander or whatever level of leadership as an officer, always maintain responsibility for what your unit fails to do or does. So.
And I would also say the second aspect besides the OODA loop is shortening the kill chain.
Yeah.
So when we talk about kill chain, it's you've got some information, and how much time does it take for you to take that information and pull the trigger on whatever solution that you have. And a great example of this, our midshipmen were out against West Point, and we had captured and hacked into one of the ATACs. So the ATAC is a tactical little computer, and it has all these different positions. So when we went to when the midshipmen went to these positions and saw where the things were laid out, he had a decision to make. Is this a honeypot? So is this really real, or are they trying to make us shoot at this certain location?
Right.
Well, we had another program, which was an AI program, that had kind of talked about where they thought that all of these weapons and equipment that West Point was going to have are located.
Yeah.
So he took the information from the computer, and he took the information of the most likely place where it was an anti-air asset was, and he had only one artillery shot to shoot the entire time. And then he took his kind of, hey, what I know of the situation, and made a decision within 3 minutes to go ahead and fire that shot.
Yeah.
And it won that particular battle because it was where West Point had their things.
Yeah.
And it's all about shortening that kill chain. So
makes sense.
combat in the future, I imagine, also is going to try to shorten that kill chain.
Yeah. So combat in the past, combat at present, combat in the future is going to be characterized by speed, right? The ability to bring lethality to targets.
Yes, but also the right kind of lethality.
Yeah.
So if we just use tomahawks to kill everyone, then that doesn't make sense.
The ethicist would say it fails the test of proportionality.
Yes.
Right.
And the other thing that we're really interested in is also escalation of force.
Yeah.
So you don't have to destroy things. And now that we have technology, we actually have the ability to be more surgical about things. So let's talk about pirates or drug runners or straight transit. Now we can have a layered defense, and think of a castle. A castle has a moat and a dragon, and then it's got spikes, and we can have that with technology where we have this layered defense for boats where, we can immobilize some of these fishing boats without killing people, and then they're not going to do the thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think we have some really great opportunities with technology to do things cheaper and still de-escalate so that we don't get dragged into another war.
Yeah. I love that. Let's bring this home with what are your immediate plans, maybe even long-range plans for Aries as the coach, as somebody with his finger on the pulse of the cultivation of curiosity and adaptability and this mindset for modern war. What's the plan going forward?
Well, the great thing is I'm not the one that creates the plan.
Yeah.
I create an environment along with all of the great other officers and teachers that support the program.
Yep.
And what I'm excited about is what are the midshipmen going to do?
Yep.
What plan are they going to come up with?
Yep.
This year we are going to have a competition with West Point, and what we want to do is we want to integrate them a little bit more to build that camaraderie and teamwork between our sister service.
Yep.
And so we're going to focus on maritime. So we want to start integrating YPs, boats, ribs into some of the exercises that we're doing, and we're planning on doing that in December.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited.
December.
This December here in Annapolis,
That's great.
we want to integrate all these different technologies, and we want to integrate the water and see what they come up with.
Yeah.
The other thing I really would like to do is, with all of the service academies, is help them develop a FPV program.
Yeah.
First person view drone racing program.
Yep.
Now there's a debate. A lot of people say, well, drone racing isn't combat related and it doesn't really advance it. I mean, and I think that that's not the case. In order to understand how FPV works, you need to understand the art of it.
Right.
Just like we have a shooting team, having an FPV team is important.
Yeah.
And so we're going to help all the academies build that program.
That's great.
So that maybe we can have a Commanders-in-Chief trophy of drone warfare in the future.
Yeah. That'd be exciting.
It would be.
Yeah, I could see that now. I think that would be well attended. Again, it does speak to generationally a type of competition that many are fascinated with and invested in anyway. So,
and let me tell you, it is exciting. We just came back from Sandhurst, and we did a military drone racing competition with a bunch of other countries. And I'll tell you, it's like riding a roller coaster and fixing it real time. And I was talking to one of the midshipmen, and Remy is his name, and he's like, I was so nervous going, flying this thing beforehand, and just flying it. So there are a lot of really great lessons from flying FPV that apply to understanding how drone warfare works, and then basics like charging the batteries is really important. People don't realize that. So learning all those skills in the ecosystem stems from something like this.
In competition, on the fields of friendly strife.
Exactly.
Right?
And unfortunately right now, the Navy does not have a drone team. The Marine Corps does.
Yeah.
The Army does.
I've heard this.
But we don't. And I would love for a command to just take that up and say, we're going to make a drone team for the Navy.
Yeah.
And, I think it would be a great thing because...
Well, we've gotten... viewers, listeners from the fleet before providing us feedback and reaching out with questions. So I think the odds are pretty good there's going to be somebody viewing this right now where a seed has been planted.
That would be great.
About some way we can connect more effectively with the larger fleet operating forces.
It's so important in the maritime and for ships and for submarines and for aircraft. It's so important.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I have to say, if there's anybody I'm really, really happy is on this journey with our midshipmen, influencing things from an institutional standpoint. Given your background, it was really fascinating to learn your background and how it ties into this current moment and how it's so important to what we're doing going forward. Again, I really appreciate your time here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of reconnect and hearing what you've got going and what the midshipmen have going at this time. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.